lichens bring the rain going this way. So each tree is collecting water, bring it down the stem and bring it to its own roots. And on the side where it isn't bending, the rainwater will fall apart. I think this is a primary forest or near primary forest because you see no stumps. This is an old stump from a tree which broke down naturally, and if you look here, there is no stump, it's just trees. So my definition is if you have a complete tree age without thinning, and that means depending on tree species at minimum 300 to 400 years no thinning. Deadwood is very important in the forest. We don't know how important because of course we don't know all the species depending on it, but it's also like a sponge storing water. It's always wet and cool even if we have dry periods, weeks without rain. It's cooling the forest, and in natural forest we have up to 400 or even more cubic meters per hectare, as I experience here in the Romanian primary forests. And in Germany, for example, I think it's also in spruce plantations here in Romania, you have perhaps 2 or 5 cubic meters, and that means almost nothing left for the forest. And forests without a lot of dead wood are not that resilient. Those old trunks, they are like spaceships of biodiversity, laying here ready to be discovered. We have more than 1,000 insect species which are living here, more than 1,000 species of fungi living here. So and we don't know which species is important, which is not. But I'm happy that they are there. Perhaps they are not important, but it's important to keep them alive because it's so wonderful to have such a rich forest. A forest without dead wood, it's losing its soul. The question I've been asked very often: if you want to protect forest, where should the timber come from? I say that shouldn't be the question. The question should be, where do we get the water in the future from? Forests are much more important for the local climate, for creating clouds, for having more groundwater. For harvesting timber, we need resilient forest. And the amount of timber we can take out is decreasing with rising temperatures, because the hotter it gets, the more biomass the forest needs itself. I think it's more important that you have really big trees where the soil is deep enough, that you have a lot of dead trees laying on the ground, that you have a rich biodiversity concerning tree species. In this case, that means spruce and maple and beech. Perhaps we know 10 to 15% of all species of the forest. Most are not discovered so far. Most of them, of course, bacteria, fungi, and so on. Bacteria and fungi, those little creatures are very important, and we know that at latest since the COVID-19 pandemic, that little creatures are very important. And as long as we don't know what is living in a forest, we don't know how a forest works, and therefore we should leave the forest on their own, because the only thing we know is that forests are doing a great job since 300 million years without foresters. Foresters are butchers for trees. And do you know any animal which is happy about the butcher, even if the butcher say, "Oh, I take care for you"? Animals wouldn't trust the butcher, and so trees wouldn't trust the forester, believe me. In the moment, the big companies are more like modern colonization of Romanian forests. Of course, not directly and with better PR, but in the future, their role should be to bring the timber consumption and the protection of forests in a balance. Because in Germany, for example, we will lose around about 50% of the forest coverage because of the plantation system, which is driven by such big companies. The age is very important for the storage of carbon and for the production of oxygen. Modern plantations can do the job because they are weak, they break down after several decades in storms, in bark beetle attacks, or because of droughts in a warming climate. So resilient forest are forests which store carbon for centuries or thousands of years, and therefore we need the oldest forest we can get. It's so important to keep the last primary forest here, so that you can compare what a real forest means and what you have lost in the other forests. In Germany, besides wolves, we don't have predators. We have a very high population of raw deer and red deer, and they are destroying the forests. The destruction of the forest is caused by heavy thinning and the absence of big predators, and you're lucky that you have them here. I've experienced that you have just a few ticks here in the forest. In Germany, if you walk through a forest like this, I promise you after 5 minutes you have your first tick. Here, after a whole day walking through the forest, I just get one. And that's a good sign that the balance in nature is working here, not in Germany, so we can learn from the Romanian primary forests. Here we see a wonderful root system, and the root system in general, many foresters tell people that the root system is as big as the crown of a tree, but in reality it turns out that it's at minimum twice as big in diameter or even bigger. And so seen, a tree is standing feet up, head down, because in the roots there are brain-like structures. One molecule which is similar, identical in the root tips and in our brains for signaling. So there are many things identically working. Trees are here since 300 million years, and we are on this little planet since 300,000 years. So it's logical that many principles has been invented much earlier. And we know that a tree is steering, for example, the needles and the leaves with the roots. When it's going to be too dry, that the leaves close, the stomata, for example, this is a signal from the roots. We know that roots store energy, that roots store memories, that roots has the possibility to detect more than 20 different parameters in the ground. And even hear water flowing. I think that it's a frequency around about 200 hertz or so. So that are the main parts. And what are we doing with forestry? We are driving over the head of the trees with big machineries. We are destroying the soil. We are destroying the storage of water and the possibility of roots to root in this soil. So this is the most important thing of a tree. And even if we would cut a tree, many trees are supported and getting support even if the complete trunk has been cut from neighboring trees, because they support each other without condition. Even if we think the tree is away, it's still there. The problem with the desertification in southern Romania is the same problem that we face in Germany in many parts. Meanwhile, all the people, let's say 10 years ago, would have said, oh, never a problem, we will always have enough rain, always have enough groundwater. No, now it's away. And the solution for these problems are trees. Because trees neither love hot temperatures and periods without rain, so they create their own climate. And when you see the latest research that shows that trees can cool down a hot summer day, a forest can cool down a hot summer day on average around about 10 degrees. And you have significant more rain over such forests, over old forests, not plantations. Then that's the solution. So you can even locally cool down the climate, although it's rising globally. Because many people think, what should it mean if I plant a tree, if I rescue a forest, if the Chinese people, the American people continue to blow out as much carbon as they do now. No. It's a local problem, and it can solve in this sense locally, and therefore you need intact forests, and therefore it would be a great idea to have a green belt. In Germany, some scientists have developed a system where you can watch per satellite how cool or hot a forest or farmland is, and if you cool it down, you can calculate it per year. They should get a certain amount of money. For example, if they cool down for 2 degrees, they get, let's say, €10 per hectare. If they cool down 10 degrees, they get €100 per hectare for the benefits for the people. So that may be a solution, because On the other hand, farmers in the dry south of Romania will perhaps lose their income when the rain is decreasing. I think there is no conflict, man, wildlife, man, nature, because we are part of nature. We are thinking that we are not part of nature and that we can manage it until death, the death of nature, and make everything into cultivated land. No. And then on one hand, the landscape will lose its soul, which is very important. We need also emotional food, and we all very often forget that. And on the other hand, without rain, without cool weather and climate, and without a rich biodiversity, also farmland wouldn't work. Many critics say I'm anthropomorphizing trees, but what shall I say? Shall I talk about forest in tree-ish? I'm not good in tree-ish. I think that would be much too slow, because trees are around about 1,000 times slower than we. And I try to hit the heart, not the brain. And I think that's exactly the difference. And that's what makes other foresters very angry, because now people realize, wow, that are not just green stones, that are somewhat like plant elephants, with families and with memories, and they may feel pain, and they have a language, and oh, how can you cut such lovely beings? Yeah, right, that's exactly what I'm saying, and yeah, perhaps people like that. I have an aim when I'm 90 years old, sitting in a chair, looking at the forest. I wanted to say, yes, it was a good life. I have everything done well. I know that's not very easy, and I don't want to rescue every forest, because that would mean that I would think I'm God. That's not possible. But yeah, if I think I have done most things right, then I'm happy.